it's time to move to another speaker. The next one is about expanding renewable energy generation without land use competition. The speaker is Nick Kanopoulos from Bright Solar, who is the president and CEO there, and has a rich professional international experience. Before founding Bright, he was managing director for channel development in Europe, Africa, Middle East for the solar business unit of Applied Materials. He was director of the Multimedia and Communications Business Division of Atmel Corporation, managing product development groups based in the US, Greece, Sweden, and China. He was founder and CEO of Data Communications Technologies, which was acquired by Atmel, director of the Integrated Electronics Group at RTI International, one of the largest independent research centers in the US, and for 10 years, adjunct professor at Duke University in North Carolina. He has published one book and over 100 papers in journals and conference proceedings. He has 6 patents issued and pending, and is a member of several international trade and scientific organizations. Thank you very much, Nick, for being with us, and we are looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you for having me. Let me share my screen.
Sure.
Good afternoon, everybody. And the subject I want to talk about is how we can actually develop solar energy without competing with farmland, so that we can have both food production and energy production at the same time. What motivates the dual use of land thinking is the fact that the world's population will increase to over 9 billion people by 2050, 9.7 billion to be precise, as it is estimated by the UN Economic Forum report. Now, that creates a big problem in the food supply for this many people. In order to feed these people at today's nutritional levels, where, by the way, 700 million people are malnourished, we have to increase the production of food by 85% compared to today's levels. Now, this cannot be done using the usual means of farming. And the reason for that is that the agriculture consumes 14% of energy and 70% of water globally. So as you realize, I mean, if we go the same way we're doing things today, we simply will run out of resources for humans. So we have to employ technology, and the most promising technology for that is controlled farming, and the most known and already available technology here is greenhouse farming. And this is a potential solution because in greenhouse farming, we can produce 10 times per square meter what we produce in open field agriculture by using 10 times less water. And this is a very important factor. However, there is a penalty. And the penalty is that greenhouses use 10 times more energy. And right now, this energy is mostly based on fossil fuel generation. And the implication here is that this energy has adverse environmental impact. So the question that we're trying to answer is, okay, how can we solve the sustainable food supply while producing energy that is not affecting tremendously the environment? In fact, 28% of the operating costs of a greenhouse are energy related, and they go to functions like cooling, heating, ventilation, lighting, and so forth. So the big picture that relates the energy production and the environment is based on the stated EU ambition for initially 40%, but now 55% emissions reduction by 2030 and carbon neutral economy in 2050. The Dutch ambition is 49% emissions reduction in 2030, and in 2030, They expect to have 49 terawatt hours renewable electricity on the North Sea and 30 terawatt hours renewable electricity on land. And I'm talking about the Netherlands here because the Netherlands is the European champion in operating high-tech greenhouses. In fact, this relatively small country is the second largest food exporter in the world after the United States, while being more than 200 times less land available. So the reason they are able to do that is by using high yield farming through greenhouses and precision farming in an environment where they control completely. So both wind and solar have, of course, a large footprint on the landscape, and there is land use competition, and of course, there's the not in my backyard syndrome that causes several problems, especially in countries where land is scarce. The agriculture is, again, under pressure in many regions, including the Netherlands, and climate change-related extreme weather phenomena, changes in the climate pattern and water availability for irrigation are major concerns for the people in the agricultural sector. Additional costs for crop protection measures and insurance policies, risk of short and long-term yield losses are inevitable. So the agri-PV promise is essentially the ability to use the land for two purposes at the same time. One, produce solar energy on land without sacrificing the agricultural production. And agri-PV can be done in two different ways. One is through building greenhouses, and the other one is by installing crop protective structures in open field agriculture. The trade-offs are, of course, benefit versus cost. In a greenhouse, you have a complete control of the environmental conditions. Therefore, you can yield a lot more production per square meter of farming than in the open field agriculture. The trade-off is the cost. The cost for building a greenhouse today, fully operational, is about 100, 125 euro per square meter. Open field crop protective structures protect the plants from adverse weather conditions, produce energy at the same time. However, you cannot really control the environmental conditions. Therefore, the yield will be the yield of open field agriculture minus loss due to weather conditions such as hail, snow, heavy rains, and stuff like that. So let's see what is the agri-PV potential impact in terms of energy generation and the environment. Let's take as an example case the Greek agriculture, where the area covered with, if an area covered with agri-PV system is 12,000 hectares, which is the 5% of the total area used for fruit and vineyards, then that will be equivalent to an installed power of 14.5 gigawatt, which is 2 times the current installation for wind and solar in the country. And the electricity produced will be 18 terawatt hours per year, when the overall Greek consumption right now is 51 terawatt hours per year, which is pretty significant, with only 5% of the land used for fruit and grape production. The second example is even more impactful, I guess, is the Mediterranean viticulture. If we assume that the area covered, the area used for viticulture in the Mediterranean countries, meaning Portugal, Spain, France, Italy, and Greece, 20% of that area uses agri-PV, then the installed power will be 240 gigawatts, and that will need 380,000 hectares of land, and the electricity produced will be 348 terawatt hours per year, which, as you see, is 20% more than what Spain uses per year. So the potential for the deployment of agri-PV systems is tremendous. In that respect, in the both protecting the plants and at the same time generating clean energy. The Dutch fruit cultivation area covered 4,000 hectares, or 20% of all fruits cultivated in the Netherlands. The installed power 4.8 gigawatts, and the electricity produced 4.3 terawatt hours per year, when the overall solar in the Netherlands is 5.2 terawatt hours per year. So these examples illustrate how we can install clean energy production without sacrificing land for cultivating food. How to realize the potential impact? We have to answer basically three questions. Can it be done from the agricultural point of view? Should it be done from the business and financial point of view? And may it be done from regulatory and social points of view? The farmer should be able to realize a clear benefit by allowing the installation of agri-PV on his land. And the question here is, okay, what happens with the crop yield under agri-PV systems? How does the reduction of light affect quantity and quality of the cultivated crops? How well the crops are protected against extreme weather? Can this generate an economic benefit for the farmer? Answers can come only through real-life testing, not reproducible across different climates, because we have to make a multitude of decisions in order to assess the parameters to monitor the expense, time-consuming, and required for thinking farmers. Here you see an installation that we have done in Holland over a blueberry farm, and the results are extremely good. And the answer to all farmer questions, and also questions for potential PV investors and installers who want to take up the cost for making the installation. Of course, whoever invests in installation should profit from it by selling the energy. The cost may be too high for many small and medium-sized farmers, in which case external investors are needed. And investors require the lowest possible cost and the highest possible income. And the simplest possible system should be to produce the more electricity possible, but the amount of electricity produced is directly analogous to the amount of light the system will block from the plants. So energy production and plant growth has to be balanced in a way that the plants don't incur a significant penalty in terms of growth and yield, and the energy production is sufficient to justify the investment in the construction. Introduction of agri-PV systems must be possible in regulatory terms and socially acceptable. Right now, in most countries, in most European countries, there is a regulation where regular PV systems cannot be installed in high productivity land. So that's why most of the solar farms are installed in places where no farming is done. With dual use land, then that rule can be removed, because it's not either or, but it's both, which will allow for easier PV installation, since we are talking about flat land that is arable, and therefore it's easier to install the support structure for the PV. Are there any special regulations that should govern double land use? Does the land lose its designation as agriculture? What are the situations with building permits, etc.? In many countries, these questions have been answered. There is a pioneering program in Massachusetts, in the U.S., where there is a premium subsidy for dual use of land for agriculture and solar energy generation that makes it, in fact, a very attractive investment. Regulations also exist in European countries like Holland, and I know the Greek government is also working in some special regulations to essentially bring together solar energy generation and farming. So what is the role of our company? Our company has developed technology and nanotechnology that we apply on glass to produce a semi-transparent solar panel for agri-PV applications, either in the form of greenhouse covering or crop protective structures in open field agriculture. Our technology is based on a nanostructure material which absorbs UV light, which is useless for both crops and solar cells, and retransmits this light in the visible part of the spectrum where it can be used by both plants and solar cells. The net effect of our coating is the increase in the photosynthetic active radiation that the plants see by about 7%, and the increase in the solar cell efficiency by 7 to 10%. As you see in the diagram of the right-hand corner, we have the blue graph is where we absorb energy, and we transmit the same light energy in the red graph, where both plants and solar cells are active. Also, the transparency of the glass is uniform over the entire visible spectrum, which is the upper right-hand corner. You see the transparency of the glass is 80%, and it's completely uniform between 400 and 800 nanometers, which is the visible spectrum. And this is a picture of a sample of our glass. This is in pictorial form how this thing works. So you have a coated glass, and behind it we have a UV lamp. And when the lamp it's off, the glass looks like a normal glass. But when we turn the lamp on, the glass becomes red because we absorb all the light, the UV light, and then we retransmit it in red, and that's what you see. This transparent panel has been deployed in a pilot greenhouse, which is erected over a vineyard next to Greece's largest winemaking company. This is 1,000 square meters and is done for demonstration purposes in order to monitor how the grapes grow and perform in this environment, and at the same time, what is the energy generated and how this energy compares to what the greenhouse needs to operate. We will be ready to announce, or we hope to announce in the April and time frame, something that happens for the first time in the Northern Hemisphere, which is a second crop, grape crop, within 12 months by the same field, vineyard. Because we are able to control the conditions in the greenhouse and provide the vineyard with weather that emulates the weather in close to the equator in Central America. The next thing I want to show you is the dashboard, which allow us to monitor the energy production in the greenhouse in real time. We have a weather station there and a full automated system for cooling, heating, humidity control, and so forth. And this is our system for monitoring energy production and the equivalent monetary value for the energy produced. Right now, we are in a position to claim that we produce more energy needed for the greenhouse to operate, and the excess energy is fed to the biological waste treatment of the winery. So the winery realizes about 800 to 1,000 euro per month in savings of their power bill. We also have a short video to show you at this point. Thank you for your attention. I'm open to any questions you might have, and we'll show you a short video from the greenhouse installation.
Thank you very much for a very nice presentation. We have some questions from the audience. There's a question from Mel. How does installation of solar panels affect fauna biodiversity in relation to pollinating birds, insects, etc.?
Okay, in open farming, it doesn't. In greenhouse installations, the pollination is done with bees that we bring into the greenhouse, and is completely controlled. So there are not any pollination issues in terms of being able to pollinate the crops that we are cultivating in the greenhouse.
Surely the greenhouses will be located far away from cities. Can the energy be easily stored?
Okay, there are greenhouses that are located far from cities. It's not relevant to us. It depends how close are to the grid. In other words, if there are any power lines passing close by, because the idea here is that you build a photovoltaic system which you connect to the grid, and you sell energy to the grid, and then you use the money in order to offset the money you spend to support the greenhouse. So if the greenhouse is located near the grid and a grid connection is feasible, then there's not any issue. If it's not, then we can use a battery system and store the energy and use it in an autonomous fashion. So the greenhouse can be energy autonomous without any grid dependency.
Okay, what about the generation of waste from the panels, large amount, as contemplated in the impact metrics and its future management?
Yes, all these panels are recyclable. And therefore, after their use, 20, 25 years, I would say 25 or more years of life expectancy, then the panels are recycled. And there are companies in Europe where you become a subscriber, and they recycle the panels after their use. So there's not really waste per se on the panel. The panels are fully recyclable, not toxic materials in the making of the panel.
Great. Is it also applicable for trees, which can grow until 3-4 meters?
Yes, yes. We have done, as I showed you, an installation for blueberries in Holland. And in March, we will do apples, pears, and some citrus tree. I don't remember exactly what our partner will use it for, but the height is not an issue. We can do it as high as we need to.
Okay, does the weather manipulation for getting multiple crops in one agricultural year affect the plant in the longer run? It's a question from Usman.
No, of course, I don't know the farming aspects and how the farming interacts with the land and the soil, but this is done naturally close to the equator. So the fact that we affect the environment is in a closed and controlled space. So we're not affect the environment in general. It's like keeping the temperature and the humidity at desired levels in your home.
The question from Edmund. Nick, does not the covering over the farmland stop necessary sun or rain reaching the crops? And is there any reduction in yields from this?
Okay, there is no, I mean, we have done experiments and the reduction in yield is, we cannot really register the reduction in yield because we manipulate the transparency of the panel based on the crop that we cultivate under the panel. As far as water is concerned, our outside or open field agriculture structure collects the rainwater and uses it. In fact, we are much more resource efficient in using the water rather than wasting the water or providing to the plants more water than needed. So we have a way to collect the water and then we take it, store the water and water the plants. In a greenhouse, the water is used at the quantity needed to water the plants. And of course, there's not any water getting into the structure itself. The blockage of the sun is done, as I said, selectively based on what kind of crop we are farming and based on what type of sun or light the plants require in order to photosynthesize. The visible spectrum, though, is not used in its entirety by the plants. The two regions of the spectrum that are very important for the plants to photosynthesize are 400 to 450 nanometers and 650 to 700 nanometers. Therefore, by emphasizing or by boosting the light availability in those regions, we essentially do not have any major impact on the yield of plant growth. And in fact, that's what we saw for grapes and blueberries. Now we are doing strawberries and fruits. So, and also we are going to build a difficult plant, which is tomatoes that require a lot of light. We're going to build a pilot greenhouse in Greece that will be done this year.
And the question from Luma, what are the limitations for this technology? Would it work well also in the cold seasons?
It works well in all seasons. In fact, from the energy point of view, the colder the better, because the solar panels have a negative temperature coefficient as far as efficiency is concerned. So when the temperature increases, the conversion efficiency of the panel goes down. So for cold weather, the panels will work better for generation. Now, in terms of the plants, in open field agriculture, we simply protect the plants, okay? But in the greenhouses, of course, in cold weather, because you can control the environment, we have a huge advantage over the open field.
And the question from Cristiano, is food taste and flavor complexity affected by this new way to concept crops?
In open field agriculture, no. In greenhouses, could be, but what we are doing is no doesn't particularly have this kind of effect on crops because we are changing essentially the structure of the greenhouse. So if you cultivate, let's say, tomatoes in the greenhouse and they taste certain ways, our panel is not going to affect the taste of the crop in the greenhouse. It will be like any regular greenhouse farming. In open field agriculture, no, because you farm in the ground and you get what you get.
Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect. And the last question, you mentioned a lot already about the benefits of the solar glass. So what are the costs for the end user?
Okay, that's a very good question, and the question all our customers ask. The cost, we see it as the differential cost between using a regular glass to build a greenhouse and our solar glass. The differential cost between regular glass and solar glass is 32 euro per square meter right now. But the difference is that when you build a greenhouse with regular glass, then you have to pay for that glass by selling crops. In our case, the glass pays for itself because it generates energy that the user of the greenhouse sells to the grid and makes money out of it. So depending on the location of installation, the differential cost for the glass can be recovered within 4 to 4.5 years by the greenhouse operator.
Okay,
And
that
then, of
sounds
course,
good.
you have an additional cash flow for your operation that doesn't relate to crop cultivating, but relates to energy sales.
Okay, thank you very much, Nick, for a great presentation and for your answers. I hope you will stay with us also for discussion.
You are welcome.
Thank you.